Shalom, this is Pastor Lyndon Wynn for another exciting portion of As the Torah Rolls, and this portion is called Parsha Vayeira, which means He appeared. It's out of Genesis 18:1 through Genesis 22:23, and this is Bet Tehillah on YouTube, and this is Pastor Lyndon Wynn, and I'm praying that you're going to enjoy this Parsha and you won't forget the lessons that we learn as the Lord speaks to us through His Word. Shalom. Okay, so let's have a review of some of the exciting things that happened in the last Parsha. Okay, and that was Parsha Lech Lecha, okay, which starts with the covenants. Abraham was told to leave his country, his father's house, because it was mostly mixed idolatry there. Abraham had a destiny of promise. His name means one who crossed over. Salvation by faith and belief starts here in a major way. The making of covenants with the Father, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, is key to blessings. Remember, God said, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. Because Abraham is in covenant with him. Abraham takes his family, all the believers in his household, and everyone that was converted with him, and they all leave. We continue with our review of the last Parsha. Abraham was from the Ur of the Chaldees, which was very steeped in idolatry. And we find out from other sources that Abraham was partially raised by his grandfather Noah, who taught him as a very young child about Elohim, the Creator. And Abraham began to call on the name of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, God. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is another name for God, but in English we translate it as Lord, L-O-R-D. Okay. Abraham was coerced by his wife to take Hagar as a wife, and he fathered Ishmael. This is an ancient Middle Eastern custom. Having children was very important during that time, and women stressed to have children or to have babies. Okay, so it was not unusual if a woman was barren that if she had a handmaiden and the handmaiden had a baby, the woman would raise that baby as it was her own. Okay, so that was a common custom back then in case of being barren. Okay, and Hagar runs from Sarah and discovers that God is not just creator, but also the one who sees me, El Roi. What a wonderful discovery that Hagar made, that God personally sees each and every one of us. We see also about the New World Order of that day under Nimrod. Nimrod seeks to put his throne above God. Who else did seek to put his throne above God? Okay, the fallen one. Okay, by building a tall tower to reach the heavens. And God had to put a stop to it at that time. And every male in Abraham's household makes a covenant with God, and they call this circumcision, this covenant that they made. Adonai tell Abraham and Sarah, God changed their names to their destiny. Okay, God had a destiny for them, and their names were going to change to reflect that. Abram was changed to Abraham, and Sarai was changed to Sarah. They were also told they would have a son named Isaac, Yitzhak in Hebrew, and it means laughter. And the Hebrew word ben, the Hebrew word for today, means son. That's how you say it in Hebrew, son. Isaac was their ben. Okay, here is a map of the Middle East with the Arabian desert, and you can see the route that Abraham was taking. And I put a black circle here in the area where he was, where he made the altar, where he camped by the tree, the terebinth tree, the turpentine tree. Okay, and it's by Bet-El and Salem, which would become Jerusalem. Okay, this is the area, and this is the map. So you can see where this is showing the map. Before we get into reading the word, we're going to do the prayer before we do the reading of the word. So if you have a scarf or a kippah or a hat, you can go ahead and cover your head during the prayer out of respect for Elohim, who is created us and is our covering. We will do it first in Hebrew, then we will do it in English, and then in Spanish. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu et derech hayeshua b'Mashiach Yeshua. Amen. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with your teachings from your word. Bendito eres tú, Señor Dios nuestro, Rey del universo, que nos ha dado el camino a la salvación en el Mesías, Yeshua. Amen. We'll do the reading of the first verse in Hebrew, Genesis 18:1, out of our Parsha. Vayeira elav Adonai be Elonei Mamre vehu Yoshev Petash haOhel Kehom Hayom. And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent. Okay, this is Vayeira, and I'm reading out of chapter 18, verse 1. And the Lord appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. Now, there's a lot of deepness in every Parsha, and I'm going to tell you that you need to listen to all the little details, okay? His tent was his church. It's where he talked to people. It's like a church or an assembly. Anyway, in the heat of the day means that it was probably during difficult times of their day. Maybe there was partly a famine or something, okay? But the tent is where you worshiped God, okay? And by the trees in Mamre, okay? And the trees were like the tree of life. So we're seeing a picture here of Abraham in his tent, okay, during difficult times, but yet he was a tree of life to other people, okay, that he would speak to. He was an evangelist during his time. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and there were 3 men standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and he bowed down towards the ground and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by, I pray you, from your servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. It's during the heat of the day, during the dry season here, and he could see that these people have been traveling. So he wanted to bring them, he wanted to give them, wash their feet, maybe give them something to eat, water, and talk to them. Because that's how Abraham would convert people, is by talking, by giving them water maybe, or bread. He was very hospitable. Okay. What else did I want to tell you about this? Oh, yes. Okay. When this time happens, this was the 3rd day after he was circumcised, so this was the most painful time for him. But during his most painful time, or his most painful season after his circumcision, is when God appeared. Okay. So sometimes when you're going through something, maybe it's the most difficult of days, but God is behind the scenes and he will come to you, okay? Maybe he doesn't come to you in the form that you think God should come to you in, but he will come to you in some way or some manner. Okay, and I shall get a morsel of bread and comfort your hearts, for you after that you will pass on, for that is why you have come to your servant. And they said, So, do as you have said. And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it and make cakes. And those were like matzah bread, like Passover breads, okay? And Abraham ran to the herd and fetched a good tender calf and gave it to the young man, and he hastened to dress it. And he took butter, milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they ate. Okay, we're on verse 9. Okay. And they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he said, There, in the tent. And he said, I shall certainly return to you at this time next year, and see, your wife will have a son." And Sarah listened at the tent door, which is behind him. And now Abraham and Sarah were old and well up in age, and the manner of the woman had ceased to be with Sarah. Okay. Now during this time that they're going to come back, that Isaac is going to be born, is going to be on the eve of Passover. Okay. So they may be, this is pre-Passover that they have this matzah, okay? Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I have grown old, will I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" And the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Will I, who am old, of a surety bear a child? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I shall return to you about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Then Sarah denied it, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. And he said, "No, but you did laugh." We're on verse 16. And the men rose up from there and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. So Abraham went to walk them a little ways. Okay? And the Lord said, "Will I hide from Abraham that thing which I am about to do, seeing that Abraham will surely become a great nation and a mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed in him? For I know him that he will command his children and his household after him, and they will keep the way of the Lord, to do acts of loving kindness and judgments, so the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him." And the Lord said, "Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I shall go down and see whether they have done everything I told them, which has come to me, and if not, I shall know." And the men turned their faces from there and went towards Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. And Abraham drew near and said, "Will you also destroy the righteous with the wicked?" And I want you to notice this. Destroying the righteous with the wicked, okay, is not something that God does, okay? If there are 50 righteous within the city, will you also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are there? And I want you to, you'll have to do this on your own, because I don't want to make this Parsha too long, okay? But all these numbers that I'm going to tell you have meaning, okay? "Far be it from you to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be like the wicked. Far be that from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" And the Lord said, "If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I shall spare the entire place for their sake." And Abraham answered and said, "Behold now, I, who am but dust and ashes, have taken upon me to speak to the Lord." He's saying, "I'm nothing, but I am going to speak to you, Lord, okay, for the sake of those people in Sodom and Gomorrah." He goes, "If by chance there will lack 5 of the 50 righteous, will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? And that's 45, and 45 means to withhold judgment. And he said, "If I find 45 there, I shall not destroy it." And he spoke to him yet again and said, "If by chance there will be 40 found there," he said, "I shall not do it for 40's sake." And he said to him, "Oh, do not let the Lord be angry, and I shall speak. If by chance 30 be found there," and he said, "I shall not do it, if I find 30 there." And he said, "Behold, now I have taken upon myself to speak to the Lord. If by chance 20 will be found there," and he said, "I shall not destroy it for 20's sake." And he said, "Oh, please, let not the Lord be angry, and I shall speak yet this once." So he's going to speak one more time. "If by chance 10 will be there," and he said, "I shall not destroy it for 10's sake." And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. I'm now reading out of chapter 19 of Vayeira. And two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Okay, to sit in the gate is to sit, that's where the judges would sit. Okay, and when Lot saw them, he rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you will rise up early and go on your way. And they said, No, but we will stay in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they went in with him and entered his house, and he made a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Remember I said it was Passover, and they eat matzah at Passover. Now this is before it was official, okay? Also, let me see. Lot's being hospitable, as he has learned from his uncle Abraham. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who came in to you tonight? Bring them out to us so we can know them. Now, I told you that in the Hebrew, to know someone is to be, have relationship with them, okay? And they wanted to do relationships with them. And Lot went out to them at the door and shut the door behind him and said, I pray you, brothers, do not behave so wickedly. Behold now, I have two daughters who have not known a man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out to you, and you do to them as is good in your eyes. Now, Lot, he was not as righteous as Abraham, and he doesn't make wise decisions, okay? So he's going to let these people have his daughters. And, only to these men do nothing, for therefore they came under the shadow of my roof. So in their time and in their customs, if somebody comes into your house, they are like your family, and you protect them like family. And they said, Stand back. And they said again, This one came in to sojourn, and he thinks he is a judge. Now, these are the people of Sodom. They're saying, he thinks he's a judge. Well, he was judging, okay? Now we will deal worse with you than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, Lot, and came near to break the door. But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them and shut the door. Now, the men that pulled them in, those were the angels, okay? And they probably did not have wings. They looked like men. And they struck the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said to Lot, Do you have here any besides yourself, sons-in-laws, your sons, your daughters, and whoever you have in the city? Bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because their cry has come greatly before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. Okay. And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-laws who married his daughters and said, Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But when his son-in-laws looked at him, they go, But he seemed like one who teased to his sons-in-laws. Okay. So they could have been saved and they could have been spared. But perhaps they were like the rest of the people, okay? And when the morning came, then the angels hastened to Lot, saying, Arise, take your wife and your two daughters that are here, so you will not be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the man laid hold upon his hand and upon the hand of his wife and upon the hand of his two daughters. The Lord had pity on him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And it was when they had brought them out that he said, Escape for your life. Do not look behind you. Do not stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, so you will not be consumed. And Lot said to them, Oh, not so, my Lord. Behold, now your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown to me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest something bad overtake me and I die. Maybe he was too old, he thought. Okay. Behold, now this city is near to flee to, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape there. Okay, this is in parenthesis. Is it not a little one? Okay. And may my soul will live. And he said to him, so I have accepted you concerning this thing also, that I shall not overthrow this city of which you have spoken. Quick, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you have come there. Therefore the name of the city was Zoar, and Zoar, the meaning of that name means insignificant. Okay. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven and upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah. And he overthrew these cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities, that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. And he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and towards all the land of the plain, and there it was, the smoke of the country went up, like the smoke of a furnace. Now God completely destroyed everything, the people, the buildings, the trees, all the animals, all the plants, all the birds, everything, because sin has a way of transferring onto others. And if anything was left surviving, then that sin might have transferred onto them, and then the sin would completely still survive. And God was trying to destroy the sin of this city so that it did not spread to the rest of the earth. And it was when God destroyed the cities in the plain that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelled. And Lot went up out of Zoar and lived in the mountain, and his 2 daughters were with him. For he feared to stay in Zoar, and he lived in a cave. I guess after he saw what happened, and how utterly destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah was, he decided he better get up where they initially told him to go. Okay, and he lived in a cave, he and his 2 daughters, and the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on the earth to come into us according to the statute of all the earth. You remember God told everybody to be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so incest is about to take place, and they're doing it to preserve seed. They had husbands, remember, in Sodom and Gomorrah, but their husbands weren't interested in them. Okay. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, so we can preserve our father's seed. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not perceive when she lay down or when she arose. And it was the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, behold, last night I lay with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and you go in and lie with him, so we can preserve our father's seed. Now, I'm telling you, misery loves company. Okay, people who sin always want to get somebody, they always want to engage someone else to sin also with them. Okay. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he was not aware when she lay down or when she arose. I mean, that wine must have been really strong. Both the daughters of Lot were thus with child by their father, and the firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moab to this day, the Moabites, okay? And the younger also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon to this day, okay? So remember those names, Moab and Ammon, because we're going to see them later as the generations, grow. And they will come back into the stories in the future. This is the end of this chapter. I just have one more thing to say. I was thinking about those young, the husbands or the sons. It says sons-in-law, so I'm assuming they could have been married, but they may have only been in the engagement part of being son-in-law. So in that case, they would not have had relations. And like I said, having children was a very big thing in those days, and women would do anything to have a child, And here you can see they even slept with their father. And this may have been partly influenced from the place where they were living to even think that way. Maybe they saw such a thing, incest, in Sodom and Gomorrah. Just a comment, okay? Hey, I'm going to be reading out of chapter 20 of Parsha Vayeira, starting with verse 1. And Abraham journeyed from there towards the land of the Negev, the south, and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and stayed in Gerar. And Abraham said to Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent for and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, you are but a dead man, for the woman you have taken, for she is a man's wife." But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, "Lord, will you slay also a righteous nation? Did he not say to me, 'She is my sister'? And even she herself said, 'He is my brother'? In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands have I done this." And God said to him in a dream, "Yes, I am," and it's capital I, capital A-M, I am that I am. "I am knows that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I am also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. Now, therefore, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet." Now, in Hebrew, a prophet is called a Navi, okay? "And he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not restore her, know that you will surely die, you and all that are yours." So God is like, you just better not touch her, okay? Remember, Abraham is in covenant. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears, and the men were very much awed. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us, and by what have I offended you, that you have brought a great sin on me and on my kingdom? You have done deeds to me that ought not to be done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What did you see that you have done? What did you see that you have done this thing?" Okay, now people were a little bit more righteous or more believing in God, so he was fearing God, okay? And God gave him a choice. He said, "If you don't give this wife back, you're a dead man." So he's like real upset. He doesn't want to die and with everybody else dying with him. Okay, we're on verse 11. And Abraham said, "Because I thought, surely reverence for God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet indeed she is my sister, she is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife," so she was like a stepsister. "And it was when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, 'This is your kindness which you will show me, that at every place where we will come, say of me, he is my brother.'" Apparently it may have been common, that if somebody wanted somebody's wife, they would kill the husband. Okay. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen, men and servants and women servants, and gave them to Abraham, and restored Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, "Behold, my land is before you. Stay wherever it pleases you." And to Sarah he said, "Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Here it is, eye covering for you, for all that was with you, and you are vindicated before all." Okay, so it was something like a little redemption kind of thing there, that her what do you call it? Her reputation remains intact, that nothing happened. Okay. So Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his maidservants, and they bore children. For the Lord had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Okay, so this is the end of 20. And let me see, do I want to say anything else about this? So Abraham did pray okay, and he did, they made peace with each other, okay, and supposedly, okay, this is from some of the rabbis, one of the maidservants that he did give to Sarah was his own daughter. That was Hagar. Hagar was the daughter of Abimelech, okay. And if you remember that a lot of marriages in the past next chapter were meant to appease your allies, okay? And so Abimelech had a lot of respect for Abraham, especially because of his God. He could see that God was with him. So now I'm reading from chapter 21 out of Vayeira, Genesis 21, verse 1. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said to the Lord, did for Sarah what he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, and at the set time of which God had promised or spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Okay? And the reason why it's done on the 8th day is that's when their clotting factor is released. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made me laugh, so that all who hear will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah should be given children to nurse? For I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a big feast the day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scornful. So she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman will not be heir with my son, with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. Okay, this was very hard what Abraham's going to have to do. And God said to Abraham, do not be distressed in your sight because of the lad and because of your bondswoman. In all that Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, because your seed will be called in Isaac. And of the son of the bondswoman I shall also make a nation, because he is your seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a skin bottle of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she left and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she put the child under one of the shrubs, and she went and sat down opposite a good way off, about a bow shot, for she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she was sitting opposite him, and lifted up her voice, and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Do not be in awe. Okay, so do not be in awe, do not be in fear. God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in your hand, for I shall make a great nation of him. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad a drink. You know, God loves all his children. He does. You know, even though he was not the one that the promised Messiah, his bloodline would not be the bloodline that the promised Messiah would come through. Okay? But God also was going to bless this son as well. Okay? It was not, up to Hagar. This was Sarah's idea. And God was with the lad, and he grew and lived in the wilderness and became an archer. And he lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so he became a hunter. And it happened at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his army, spoke to Abraham, saying, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my son, or with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done for you, you will do to me and to the land in which you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I shall swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing, neither did you tell me, but I heard of it just today. So you're just now telling me. I didn't know about it, is what Abimelech's telling him. And Abraham took a sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what do these 7 ewe lambs mean that you have set them by themselves? And he said, for you will take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, so they may be a witness to me that I have dug this well. Therefore he called the place Beersheba. Okay, Beersheba means God is the teacher. Okay, speaks to the future of Jerusalem. Okay, because both of them swore there. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his army, rose, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, Eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the Philistines' land many days. Okay, and that's the end of that chapter. Okay, and in that chapter we see that God has 2 new names there, Eternal God, and also Teacher. Yah is the teacher. I wanted to make a mention that on the 8th day when they did circumcise Isaac, 8 means new beginning. So as he was circumcised, he came into covenant with God as a child, and he had new life, or being born again. Okay, it's like being born again. Also, when Abraham had to send Ishmael away with his mother, Hagar, sometimes, we do face some hard things in life, even with our families. And but God has a plan in everything, and we have to trust him. And Abraham trusted God. Okay, we're now on chapter 22 of Genesis, verse 1 out of Parsha Vayeira. Okay, and remember that Abraham is still not in the promised land yet. Well, he's dwelling there, but the land has not been given to him yet. So he's still in with the Philistines. Okay, and it happened after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And he said, now take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love. Okay, this is the first time love is mentioned. Okay, get yourself into the land of Moriah and offer him there as an offering upon one of the mountains which I shall tell you. Now, I think Golgotha, I've heard through commentary, Golgotha, I think, is at the foot of Moriah, which is where Yeshua would be crucified. Okay, same place. Okay, and remember, Abraham is quick to obey God. Okay, we're on verse 3. And Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son and split the wood for the offering and rose up and went to the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day, okay, it's going to take him 3 days to get there. Remember, 3 days for Yeshua to arise. Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, you stay here with the donkey. I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac, his son. And he took the fire to his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, here are the fire and the wood. But where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, God will see to it, providing a lamb for a burnt offering for himself. So they went, both of them together, and they came to the place which God had told him. about. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took his knife to slay him. Okay, now this is kind of a picture, or a foreshadow, a picture, because they were against child sacrifice, of Yeshua being the sacrifice. Okay, and remember, sacrifice was also a part of worship. Then the angel of the Lord called to him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not lay your hand on the lad. Do not do anything to him, for I know that you revere God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Now we need to turn this around and look at it, that God has loved us enough that he did not withhold his only son from us. This is just a picture, okay? And his son took our place. That's why Isaac is not going to die here. Yeshua takes our place. He takes the punishment that we should have. Okay. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behind him there was a ram. Okay, a ram is a male lamb, like Yeshua was, caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord will see to it. As it is said to this day, the Lord will show himself on the mountain. Okay? Remember, in faith, he said that God would provide. So for us also, God will provide. If you're in covenant with him, he will provide. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham out of the heaven the second time and said, By myself I have sworn, said the Lord, for because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall greatly bless you, and I shall multiply your seed as the stars of the heaven and as the sand on the seashore. And your seed will possess the gate of his enemies, and in your seed will all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. When you obey the voice of God, your children and your children's children for generations are blessed because of your obedience. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham stayed at Beersheba. And it was after those days that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram. Okay? Hesed, Hazo, Bildah, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel begat Rebekah. Rebekah is Rivkah in Hebrew. And remember, this is going to be Isaac's wife. Okay. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah. Reumah, okay, bore also Tebah, Gaham, Thashash, and Maacah. Okay, and this is the end of the chapter. Okay?
And sometimes,
and there's a lot of parallels here with the Messiah. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
Shalom.
I just also want to make one more comment here, and that is sometimes we may be tested. God may put us to a test. Abraham had lots of tests in his life, but his probably the ultimate test, and maybe the last test, was to see that he would, if he would offer his son Isaac, the thing that he most loved, would he give it up for God? Did he love God that much? And Abraham, without hesitancy, he did.
This is the blessing after the reading of the Torah. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who selected us from all the peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Hashem, giver of Torah. A covenant is like an agreement, like a marriage, like a contract, okay? There are certain things that one party will do and certain things that the other party is to do. And so that's what a covenant is. And here are some things that we can do to make covenant and keep covenant with God, okay? You don't have to do this, but I pray that you will at some point and sometime. Think about things, you know. First, acknowledge that God is who he says he is, that he is God, that he created everything, okay? And then ask him, humble yourself, you know, get on your knees if you have to, and ask him to be your God and tell him you want to be his child and you want to be in covenant, okay? And you want to be redeemed through the plan of his son, Yeshua, okay? And repent, be sorry that you have not been in covenant with him and that maybe your life has gone crazy, but you want it to get right and you want him to be your God and you need his help. And also get baptized. Get baptized several times a year for cleansing. Pray 3 times a day or as needed, okay? Keep the Sabbath and start reading the Word of God. And read along with me, you know, read the Parshas when we do the Parshas and study the Parsha also. Have a sweet Sabbath. Do not forget to like and subscribe and share this video with your friends.